All right, ladies, good morning and welcome to Patch Day. Before I go over how to kind of make patches specifically and do embroidery on t-shirts, we're gonna go through a couple of what's called sampler stitches. This is just me making kind of random shapes and stitches just so we can go over what they all look like and how to do them. I think most of you know most of this, but it's always good to just like see if there's something new you haven't thought about. So we'll do the runner stitch first. I'm gonna do them smaller. I have to fit a lot of stitches on here. So our runner stitch is just the really basic in one side, out the other. And it's gonna create that alternating line of stitches. Whoop. All right, now we're gonna look at the back stitch. The back stitch is very similar, but it's gonna help us fill in those missing gaps in our line. So we're gonna start it just like our runner. Up on the fabric first. Small stitch. And then we're gonna start our next stitch. And instead of continuing forward, like we would if we were doing a runner stitch, we're gonna send our needle back through the same hole that we went in previously. So now we have two little stitches sitting right next to each other. And we'll keep going. Go up on our next stitch and back on our previous stitch. All right, let's do another one. We'll do the stem stitch. This is starting now. It might be helpful to kind of pencil out our lines. I think I'm going to do that. All right, so our stem stitch is gonna go on either side of our penciled line. So our stitch is gonna go in and kind of come right out next to it. Whoops. So the thing to notice about this stitch is that I'm actually going at a diagonal. So if this is my next stitch, I want to go in parallel from where I come out, but I'm gonna go diagonally up so that I can prepare my next stitch above where this one's coming out. Does that make sense? So I have a parallel pair of stitches here, parallel pair of holes here, and then my needle is going diagonal to set up the next parallel set of holes. And that will make a very straight set of, This one's kind of like a mini satin stitch. All right, now we're gonna try one called chain stitch. So I came up on my fabric, and then I'm gonna go down, right next to that first stitch, that first hole. before my loop closes, in fact, we'll set it aside for a second. I'm gonna go up on my next stitch. And through this loop. So I'm gonna go down to the same hole. Make a new loop. Up and through the loop. Don't pull too tight or you'll lose your cute little petal shapes. So to end our chain stitch, rather than going down in the hole that we've already made like we've done every time, we're gonna go down on the other side of this loop. So normally we go down inside the loop, we're gonna go down outside the loop, and that'll lock that last loop in place. See? Now we're gonna try one called the twisted running stitch, and I'll do this one in 2 colors. First, we're just gonna lay down a running stitch. All right, to finish our twisted running stitch, we're gonna start with a new color, and it's gonna go up right next to our first stitch, and then let's go under, and then we're gonna go from the same direction. If we went left to right, then we're gonna go left to right under our next stitch. So this green thread isn't actually going under the fabric at all. It's just going under the blue stitches. Always from the same direction. So mine are always going left to right. All right, the last stitch we'll go over is the satin stitch. First, I'm gonna show you the normal satin stitch, and then I'm gonna show you a more economical satin stitch. So normally our satin stitch involves long strips of thread. We go up right next to our other long strip, and then down again. Now the satin stitch is nice because it gives us these big bright blocks of color. It feels really soft and pretty. But look at all that thread we wasted. That's all thread that's not on the front of our work. It's all on the back. The stem stitch too kind of does this. So I'm going to show you another way to do the satin stitch that uses less thread so you can get more distance out of it. We've only got a little bit of thread in our bags, so we want to make sure we're not we're able to do as much of it as we can. All right, so this version of our satin stitch starts just the same, but rather than going back to the bottom where we started, we're gonna go back in right next to where we came in. We wanna make sure, can you see there's still, we don't wanna go through the same hole that we just went through, because that would undo our stitch. Instead, we want to go just barely next to it so that our stitches hold in place. And then down right next to where we have gone before. So rather than always starting at the bottom or always starting at the top, we're alternating. I'm gonna start at the top, go down on the bottom, go up on the bottom, go down on the top. And that's gonna give us the exact same satin stitch look from the front, but look at all that thread we're saving on the back. All right, my friends, that's my stitch sampler. There are so many stitches to learn on the internet. There's like whole books you can get from the library just full of different kinds of embroidery stitches. These are just a few basic ones, a few ones that like I use all the time. So you can try these out or you can try something new. But yeah, let's get started on our patches, shall we?